How's it going, everybody? My name is Mike from Box and Jackalope, and we are very happy to be on a kind of on-the-spot Kun-Lai Campfire because we got a whole lot of information for patch 8.3 today. Joined by Skoll Shorties and Jikai, we're going to talk about some of the upcoming content and lore that we're excited about. The first thing we actually wanted to touch on was the Horde leadership. So something that we've all mentioned on many YouTube videos and other podcasts is we would really like the council-style leadership for the Horde. Well, I think we're very happy to say that that's actually the fate of the War Chief position. The War Chief position is now dissolved, and I believe it was Thrall that was the first one to suggest having a council-style leadership in the broadcast text. So I'm very happy about this. I'll let Skoll and Kai get into more detail, starting with Skoll because I think he's really passionate about this topic and has many videos about it, and we've talked off camera and on camera about this many times. So
Yo, yeah, it is I, Skoll Shorties, who talks only about the Horde leaders most of the time. But yeah, it seems that in 8.3 my cries have been met regarding the Horde leadership. The War Chief title has been pretty much dissolved when Thrall, Lorthamar, and Bane, and I don't know who anyone else is there. I have not been on the... Rokan, I think, is there, yeah. But they basically are talking about, okay, who should be the next War Chief? What should we do next now that we've kind of made a peace treaty with the Alliance during this standstill while this whole Nyalotha craze is going on? I think that might even happen before it. I don't know yet. Again, I have not been on the PTR. I just know the broadcast text. But Lorthamar, he addresses the whole thing and how who's going to be War Chief, and Thrall's like, let's actually talk about should we even have a War Chief, and Lorthamar kind of argues a little bit that maybe we should have a War Chief because it's led us through some really dark times when we had somebody to look to for leadership, and Thrall's like, nah, just it ain't worth it, basically. And Bane and Thrall kind of discuss it, and then it just kind of comes to an agreement that the Horde is a family, and everybody should stand equal, and the council was formed then and there. And I think afterwards, Bane and Rokan have a conversation, and Rokan basically has a lot of doubts on if he should be the leader of the Dark Spear or not. He really thinks he shouldn't have it, and Bane basically reassures him and says, we need somebody to lead the Dark Spears right now. I had doubts similar to you, that I had feelings of unworthiness, and basically Bane assures Rokan to be the new leader of the Dark Spears after all he did in Battle for Azeroth, which were some pretty positive things, the Zandalari, and like Nazmir, and like he also brings up Stromgarde for some reason. I don't know if that's really a positive thing to lead the charge against the Alliance in their home in Stromgarde, but whatever. Bane says it's a positive thing.
We'll give him a point for it still.
We'll give him a point, whatever. I mean, Rokan did some good there, I guess. Which, begs the question on, did the Horde take Arathi then? That's kind of a wonder there, because someone did point out that none of the characters who led the charge in Stromgarde are currently active right now. Liadrin's active, Eitrig is active, Rokan's active. All three of those characters are active, but all the characters who led the charge against the Horde in Stromgarde. Yeah, Turalian's MIA, as far as I know. Muradin's only active for the Heritage Quest. Danaf Trollbane is like MIA too. But back on the topic, so there's a War Council now. Or not War Council, they just call it Council right now. So there's a Council instead of the War Chief. And then speaking of that, we also have Gallywix, who is dealing with his own little revolution with his own people in a place called Crapopolis or something.
Crapopolis, I think.
Crapopolis. Yeah, that's the name. That's a legitimate name. I did not make that up. That's Blizzard's name for the place. And apparently, it's on Kazan, so like Gallywix is trying to retake Kazan, basically. And I guess Gazlo, of all people, leads a revolt against him when Hobart Grapplehammer, the lead inventor for the Bodewater Goblins, who created the Giblins and the hobgoblins, I believe, and also the one raptor that traveled into space. You know, he's a very known inventor, and for some reason, Gallowix kidnaps him and is forcing him to do something. And Gazlo leads a revolt against him, and Gallowix is defeated, which probably means Gallowix is no longer trade prince.
And also, that begs the question too, whether he's going to be killed off or taken prisoner or put to work somewhere. That'll be interesting.
I would assume he dies, but I also don't mind the idea of him still being an active character in some shape or form. But if he dies, he dies. I'm not gonna cry over it. He's funny, but I'm not gonna be like, oh man, I miss Gallowix.
I don't think it would be the end of the world without Gallowix.
Nah, I feel more sorrow and emptiness with Sarfang gone. But yeah, so Gazlo might be on the goblin leadership role for the Bilgewaters, depending on that. So he might be a part of the council. But so far we only have Thrall and Bane confirmed to be on the council. I believe Rokon too.
I imagine it's going to be all the leaders that are...
Yeah, I'd assume so too. So probably Gazlo will be a nice fit on the council. I assume like something happens where like Gallowix is like, I'm done with the Horde or something, or I don't know. Like we really don't know what leads to the revolts. I assume the whole thing with Hobart is really what jumpstarts it, or you know, it could be because Gallowix was Team Sylvanas or something.
That's what I get the feeling. It's just tying up that plot thread of him burning all the paperwork and all the stuff that he's done. Skoll, really quick, I wanted to backtrack on something you said about Lorthamar that I found really, really interesting. So do you know how he said, when he was saying we should have a war chief and having a leader has led us out of dark times? The opposite argument for that is having a war chief has led the Horde down to its darkest times. So I do like the parallel for that.
I don't know if this is like word for word. I'm just like saying like.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know if he said that. Like I could bring up the broadcast text, but or you could bring them up at any time with your editing magic. But
we'll confirm it in the edit of this whether he says that.
Yeah.
Word. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. But if that is the case, that would be pretty interesting. I also really like that conversation and parallel between Bane and Rokon. Rokon was the leader that I was personally hoping for throughout all this for the Darkspear. I like him a lot. I obviously like Vol'jin a little more at the time, but he's a suitable replacement for him, and it's good that the Darkspear have a prominent character like that.
Also, we also have Lillian Voss, who's also busy in the leadership department of the Forsaken, and I thought they were going to make her the leader, but as it turns out, she actually wants to put Kalia on the throne. Rather than removing Kalia or fighting Kalia for leadership, no, it's quite the opposite. She goes to Kalia and actually asks her to become the leader of the Forsaken, which I think that's really interesting. That rather than having, I was really worried that Kalia would just show up and be like, "I'm the leader now. You listen to me. You respect me. I am your queen." I was worried that Kalia would be that type of character. But she's very reluctant to be a leadership, be a leader. And it seems like she's for it if Lillian Voss wants her to be on it. And apparently she has this conversation with Gaia Ra, of all people, that Gaia Ra thinks that Lillian Voss will become the queen of the Forsaken. And Lillian Voss is like, no, I'm just going to be a representative of my people. And Gaia Ra's like, your spirit bright as shine as my respect for my people or something. But it's interesting. So
that's going to be a big plot point for next expansion, I think, to tell you the truth.
Maybe, but it seems like they're breaking all the tie-ins that I was really worried about after 8.2.5. I was worried that it would be like an expansion later, that we wouldn't get new leaders for the Horde, like with Lillian and I think that Thrall is going to be the leader of the Orcs. It just seems
I think
confirmed.
He is right now.
Yeah, because like there's no one really else to take that spot. So we've got a council, we've got leaders. I think that's really great that they finally have that stuff all figured out.
I do as well. So, Kai, what did you think?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I was really happy to hear about the council thing. I've been reading this stuff all day long, and I'm sure you know the bits I'm most excited about.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, you know me too.
yeah, we'll definitely have to get into that. But yeah, the council thing is actually something else I was extremely excited and a bit surprised about. It did seem the most plausible route to go, but I guess that's why I'm surprised about it. It just feels right for the Horde, in my opinion. I know that we've always had a war chief,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels like with the Horde, supposed to be this sort of conglomerate of races that, at least at the founding, were down on their luck and relied on each other for survival. Not even, I don't want to say luck, but circumstances were threatening them all to extinction, but by banding together, they were able to stay strong.
Mm-hmm.
The Horde has never felt like a force that would even have, I guess you would say, a not really totalitarian, but just a central figure that commands everything, a bit like a king, I guess. I feel like by not having a character like that in charge of the Horde, it makes them appear arguably more fair than the Alliance. It's one of those matters of perspective things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I could ramble on about that all night, but to sum it up, yeah, I'm very excited that we're getting a council. My question is, like you guys were talking about earlier, like who's going to represent certain races? I do think Callie is going to represent the Forsaken, which I'll be honest, I'm sad to see Sylvanas go. I thought she was interesting as the Forsaken leader. I did not like her as war chief, but I thought she was an interesting character in general, and I actually liked her character, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I didn't really care for her as war chief. I don't think it was the right role for her. But depending on where her arc goes from here, that could either redeem that happening or not. I just don't want to see the same thing with Vol'jin happen.
Her arc is set up very interestingly right now. Like, I honestly have no clue what they're gonna do with her. We could get that could lead us into our next subject, but I want to make sure you're done with the council first, Kai.
No, that's and of course the goblins. I do think they're setting up Gazlo to take over for the goblins, which I think is awesome.
Me too, man.
I love Gazlo. I hope he gets a unique model out of it. But
yeah.
maybe the goblin heritage armor on him.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't think they. I don't know. I don't think that would actually. I mean, it would look cool, but I don't think it would be fitting. I mean, if you have everybody running around and you've got Gazlo, he just looks like another goblin.
That's true.
He should have. He should have something unique going on, or not even a mech suit, because I feel like that would be more. That feels more Gallywix than Gazlo, if you ask me. But, I don't really know. Maybe just something kind of humble, but still distinctively goblin for him.
Makes it a lot off of the Heroes of the Storm art that they've done with him. I think would be neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Have like a mech. They have like a mech on his back, like a backpack or whatever. It's kind of interesting.
I welcome that.
I've never actually played Heroes of the Storm at length in my life. However, just very recently, I've had a few friends who've been showing me little lore tidbits that I never knew about from it, and I'll definitely use some examples from it on our later topics, though. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up with the council thing. It is, again, what I thought was the most plausible thing to do, but I did not think that was the route they were going to go with, and I'm very glad that they did. So.
I think it's interesting too, especially when you have, when you think about it, Sylvanas is then the final war chief of the Horde. She's the last one that we'll ever have, probably. I don't think they're ever going to have another war chief after this. And it's kind of interesting to have that in mind.
Yeah, it's...
I think it's good that we've learned our lesson from the role, to be honest. After Garrosh, after her, it's just proven to be something that's not really safe for the faction. Just to share my thoughts really quick, because I don't want to sound like a broken record, because a lot of the stuff you guys said I share the same beliefs with. For the War Council, or not even the War Council, but the Council in general, one of the things I'm really excited about is I feel like this gives a lot of characters more opportunity to be in the spotlight, right? Like, I feel like there was always a lot of focus on this character war chief, but I feel like now we have more of an opportunity to get more minor storylines. such as for our favorite character, G Firepaw. But anyway,
Yes.
I also, and I wanted to go back to something you said, Kai, about Sylvanas. I think she's at her most interesting point right now. When she was War Chief, I felt like there wasn't too much direction for her character to go in. Like, it was just the evil route. But now she's kind of just, like, on her own doing something. And we could talk about what she's been up to from some of the broadcast text as our next topic. I think, would you guys think that'd be a good thing to lead into? Or what she basically did?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you like, I can start that one off.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Kai.
Because, well, I think I mentioned in the last video, I had right away characters going both routes, and now I kind of wish I had a third one I did the campaign with, because I do want, I mean, obviously we're talking about spoilers, so I don't really need to say spoiler alert, but I want to have a character go the route of being loyalist and shifting over whenever they have to, you know, parade. His name's slipping my mind right now for some reason.
Oh, Eitrig?
Eitrig, thank you. Yeah, whenever they have to parade him through the city,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to have a third character swap over at that point, so I'm trying to decide which horde character I'm going to do that with. But anyway,
Zhao?
oh yeah, I could do that. That does fit the bill for him. I might do that. Yeah. So anyway, and speaking of while we're talking about Cao, shout out to Cao Jun Red Brew. That's all I'm gonna say. he'll know. He'll know. Anyway, at the end of the Loyalist route, I was very surprised that I guess she kind of gave you all that vague but interesting information on what her end goal is. I guess you would say it seems like she wants to see a Death Empire or something of that sort. But what I would like to see, and I was completely against this before, I really honestly was, but now I would like to see them, I guess you would say, arguably, and I use that term very strongly, arguably justify her and all of her actions in a sense that maybe these spirits are somehow helping with some conflict in the afterlife. I don't know.
Maybe
in the
fighting off
Shadowlands.
the Void Lords or something crazy that we don't know about yet.
Right. But I mean, I guess that's just really it there. I don't think it would be entirely justifiable what she did, but again, I use the term arguably justifiable. She thinks she has good reason for doing what she's doing to that end.
That's
what I would like to see, rather than just, you know, more mustache twirling, ha ha ha, I'm evil. I would love to see a character that does bad things for what they consider to be a good purpose.
See, so what you just said there, I want to follow off of. I actually think a storyline such as that, because let's be honest, Sylvanas has a lot of fans. I like Sylvanas a lot. She's probably one of my favorite characters. I never liked she was always evil, but I never liked the pure mustache twirling part of her. The thing I always liked about Sylvanas is she's always planning something. She, as Jackie would say, she's a bomb-ass bitch. But I always like how she's planning her next step. And even now, she's still doing that. In the PTR, and I don't know if you know about this, Kai, it was actually revealed that she was trying to have Ajara kill us in Nazjatar. And I'll let Skoll kind of explain it a little bit better, because I know
I didn't know that, so yeah, this would be very interesting.
Skoll can fill it you in better, because I won't get it completely accurate knowing me.
Okay. So since we are all kind of saying our own opinions on Sylvanas, I mean, I like Sylvanas, but like I like that she's a villain. So like I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum where everybody who's a Sylvanas fan hates me because I want Sylvanas to be an antagonistic character, because she's interesting when she's villainous, in my opinion. I do like the whole idea of she thinks she's doing something right, but in reality she's not doing something right. That's kind of how I like it. I don't like the idea of her basically being just full-on villain, just full-on Gul'dan, basically, where I'm evil, deal with it. But in regards to what Sylvanas basically did, she refers to her whole bargain with Ajara, and I remember like watching it and playing the loyalist side. I was like, what? When'd you do that? Basically, her whole bargain was she met with Ajara at some point. Maybe it was VIA through Nathanos or something, but at some point, her and Ajara made contact, and Ajara was basically like, "You give me Zalatath, and I'll go ahead and kill." Apparently, like they made some sort of bargain where Ajara would kill us, and Sylvanas would provide Zalatath to imprison or kill N'Zoth with Zalatath. Apparently, Zalatath is the only thing that can kill N'Zoth, which I thought was really weird because N'Zoth was like, Zalatath will now serve my will, and he took it up all the way back in 8.1.5. But apparently the dagger can do some damage to our buddy N'Zoth, and when Ajara failed him in some capacity, so basically what's supposed to happen was she defeats us. The Heart of Azeroth does its thing where it opens up and frees N'Zoth by doing some sort of Azerite blast, breaking N'Zoth's chains and letting him free. He surfaces upwards and grabs Ajara very delicately, and apparently that was the moment when Ajara was supposed to stab N'Zoth and imprison him or kill him. I don't know the details of what it would have done. It just says that's what Ajara was supposed to do, and she failed. And she was dragged off to Ny'alotha, as we see in the preview, and she kind of gets she apparently is being tormented for trying to help out Sylvanas in some way. Apparently Ajara even calls Sylvanas out on this and calls her a traitorous banshee, which is very reminiscent to what Aegir said to Sylvanas when she was being captive by the Banshee Queen.
Sylvanas has been called a lot of names.
Yeah, she gets called Banshee a lot, obviously. But so basically, N'Zoth found out about this whole deal with Sylvanas and Ajara, and is torturing Ajara. He apparently was very offended and upset that Ajara went along with this deal. I guess N'Zoth was going to actually stick to his word this time around, which is weird to me. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. That's what the Tormentor is saying. You could have been N'Zoth's Empress, and I guess Ajara never wanted to be his Empress, which makes sense. I can't see a reality of N'Zoth being fully not N'Zoth, Ajara being fully on board of marrying N'Zoth or whatever. I don't know. But
That's a really interesting picture.
I mean, she wanted to marry Sargeras. So you basically have Ajara being tortured for this, and apparently Zalatath is there. The real Zalatath, not the dagger, but the Zalatath, the Void Elf, is hovering above her in the bubble while this torment is going on. I don't know if Zalatath has any part in the fight. As far as I think she's there, it looks just like her. But after the fight with Ajara, she gives you the dagger. Apparently she still had the dagger on her for some reason. And she's like, okay, go ahead and kill N'Zoth for me. And I guess she's outie after that. But yeah, apparently after the whole raid, or during the raid, I don't know. But Sylvanas wanted us all to die in Ny'alotha for some reason. And we don't really know why, but I guess because that didn't happen, she's upset. I don't remember the full broadcast text, but I just remember she wanted us to die in Ny'alotha along with all the heroes. And that was basically that was Sylvanas' bargain with Ajara. We were supposed to die, and we didn't. And so I guess Ajara failed on both ends, with her bargains with N'Zoth and with Sylvanas. And I don't know what they're gonna do with Ajara now, but I guess Ajara might be free now. Well, not now, but after the raid.
She's never gonna get a big, powerful husbando that way.
I
All
mean,
these failures. She didn't. She's never gonna get Sargeras or N'Zoth or whoever she's after these days.
Whatever the big bad is in the universe.
Yeah.
Ends up with Damas, confirmed.
Oh,
She ends up with Nomi.
oh snap! Yeah. Jeez.
One thing that I didn't say earlier about Sylvanas. Basically, I just wanted to, for the record, I guess, just say I agree with Kai that I like the idea of her having some weird motive that somehow redeems her for the player base that likes her. But I just wanted to clarify that because I never finished what I said earlier about that. On what you said, I think it's funny. A lot of players predicted that she sent us to Nazjatar because the thing with the Thanos, and before that even got confirmed.
I guess Nathanos gave Ajara the dagger, and I don't know. Again, like Sylvanas was Ajara was supposed to kill N'Zoth, then capture him, and I guess Ajara underestimated us, which is the biggest problem of all antagonists in WoW. You think that after everything we did, she would have been like, huh, I probably should kill these guys right now, but I'm playing with them. And that was just her biggest fault, and that's why she failed. I guess she was trying to sway us. Like, that's why she was so upset with us in the raid. Like, she's like, I was gonna defeat him, right? And you guys stopped me from doing that. So she's all snide and very upset. And even when she's being tortured, she's like, the old gods' minions are like basically like mocking her and not even calling her queen anymore. And like Ajara's like, call me queen.
Oh, I like that a lot, actually.
She's very triggered by that.
Ajara's interesting, and I hope, like... So one of my biggest hopes for next expansion after all this is to have, like, a world revamp, but I hope she's involved in the story going forward somehow. But I like that.
I really hope both Sylvanas and Ajara have some form of role.
Me too.
In the next expansion. It seems like that's what they're setting up, but, I mean... A lot of people are going like, ooh, Naga allied race, because Ajara's our friend now.
Nah, I can't see it working for some reason.
I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know at this point.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say, you don't know if it'll ever happen, but if they did make it happen, I do remember in BC there were some captured Naga that kind of mentioned how there is some underground force with Naga that are, I guess you could say, insurgents. I think it's a very low
amount.
A very low amount that felt that way, but you never know. Maybe recent events could be like, maybe it's starting to shift things more in their favor. Maybe they're starting to gain some traction. The Naga are feeling, she doesn't care about us. She cares more about her vanity.
Yeah.
They very well could use that as a means of them being like, okay, well maybe we should try to see,
I totally forgot to mention that Ajara compliments Sylvanas for her ruthlessness and how similar they are. Not exactly a good thing, but like that was when Sylvanas was war chief, and like Ajara addresses Sylvanas as war chief, and she's very kind to Sylvanas, but again, upon realization of what Sylvanas is doing and what she plans on releasing, quote unquote, Ajara's even offended, which that kind of speaks volumes just a bit, because what Ajara has unleashed in the past, Sargeras, now N'Zoth, clearly she was going to do it for her own gain, but apparently Sylvanas is doing the same thing with Death, or whatever the entity is. I'm sure it's Death, but yeah, it's kind of weird that Ajara is like, how dare you rely on that? That's a bad idea or something. So it's interesting.
So, I'd like to move on to the next character, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about our good old favorite leader of the Night Elves. Or, I don't even know if she is a leader anymore. I think she is right now. But, Tyrande Whisperwind. So a lot of players have kind of speculated her taking up more of an antagonistic role after Teldrassil and after the faction war. They've speculated that she's going to continue it, and with some broadcast text we got between her and Anduin Wrynn, that was all but confirmed, basically. She said she's not going to stop basically warring with the Horde until Sylvanas Windrunner is dead. I actually, here's the thing, I totally get why she's pissed. Like, I understand. I think she thinks the Horde is going to turn on the Alliance at some point because of Garrosh, because of Sylvanas. And I think she's not really understanding those type of leaders aren't in power anymore, and that the world needs to move past this past conflict. I think next expansion, I've speculated this with Skoll and Jikai, I think we'll get some sort of zone where she's warring with the Horde in some way, shape, or form, whether it's with those Night Warrior Night Elves or something as like a sub-faction. I just think they're setting up the Night Elves to have different leaders soon, though, and that's just me. I get the feeling Tyrande will be in an antagonistic role very soon due to that broadcast text, especially the way she was talking to poor Anduin.
Well, I would say not poor Anduin. I do actually sympathize more with her in that sense. I think Tyranda's being ticked off is very justified. I know people are like, "Oh, she's turning into a baddie. She's going insane." But look what you look what you had happen to her. Look what you had happen to Jaina, and they kind of go off the deep end. And people think they're insane, but they've lost their entire people. And then you've got Sylvanas, who actively does this to somebody else, and then people will sympathize with her, which I understand both perspectives, but I do think in a way they clash with one another. If you can understand where Sylvanas has come from, and not exactly the same way, you should be able to understand where Tyrande is coming from. Anyway, so yeah, you get Theramore gets destroyed. Jaina's crazy. Tyranda's, loses Darnassus and her home that she knew. She's crazy. And I just don't know. I don't see it that way. And on that note, I will say her suspicions of the Horde possibly returning to this warring culture is also justified, because before, whenever we supplanted Garrosh and planted Vol'jin up there, the general consensus probably was that, hey, we can look forward to a more peaceful and not really peaceful, but a more agreeable relationship between the Alliance and Horde. And again, even though a lot of people barely even consider it canon, the Horde was the first to break that with Asheron. And then, then they planted Sylvanas up there later. And yeah, it's just... She's very, I would personally say, justified in thinking, okay, this is just a cycle. The Horde is going to put somebody more reasonable up there, or they're not going to put anybody up there. But pretty soon, they're going to have one crazy that's going to want some blood, because that's the only way to keep the Horde quelled. And then they're going to turn on us. They're going to attack us while we're weak. And Anduin, maybe she feels, isn't the right leader to deal with something like that. He's not like his father. He's not the wolf.
So to go off of what you're saying, I totally understand where Tyranda's coming from. However, I think because the Fourth War, a lot of people died, and I think her trying to essentially wage more war after that, I just think we should all try and move forward after that. You know what I mean? I know that sounds kind of silly, but I don't know.
It's not silly. If you're in the game, if from an in-game perspective, I would say that would be a very justified perspective. From an out-of-game perspective, I understand where she's coming from.
Skoll, what do you think?
Right, so... I mean, I know that you and me, Box, we both really don't like Tyrande in the first place.
I'm a little biased against her already.
We're both pretty biased against Tyrande, and it's kind of one of those similar situations when Jaina was all about vengeance for Theramore. It's very similar in that approach, and it was like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. You deserve to be mad at the Horde. You deserve to be mad at Garrosh. At the very least, Tyranda's like, as long as Sylvanas is alive, there can be no peace. So at the very least, she's not going like, as long as there's Horde, there can be no peace. It could be far worse than how she could have phrased it. But even Chandris, who is her adopted daughter, by the way, is kind of like, don't you think you're being a little harsh on Anduin? I think Chandris, of all of the Night Elves, who helped fight with the Horde. Like Chandra's was the one that represented the Night Elves for the war campaign.
She was really badass too.
Yeah, I like Chandra's, but Chandra's is like, don't you think you're being a little harsh on Anduin? Anduin, he just wants peace. He just wants peace with the Horde. He's been, they've done a lot of work here, and like you can tell that Anduin's already getting kind of grumpy with Tyrande. I wouldn't say grumpy, but like he shouts at her like Tyrande, like he's offended by what she's saying. But like Chandra's is worried that she'll be consumed by the anger of her own anger, basically, and like I believe Tyrande even brings up the now Tyrande is starting to bring up, why did Elune abandon her people, which is an interesting thing to bring up, and like Chandra's is like, you can't say that, basically. But I do think that they might be building up Tyrande in an antagonistic light, where like at first it starts to be like, all right, I'm hunting down Sylvanas, but then she starts to becoming more and more consumed by her anger. I think that it's really interesting that like Gen is like defending her too. Like,
yeah, I was gonna bring that up actually.
Yeah, I think that what they're doing basically is they're just building up Tyrande and Gen and friends. Anyone who's really like really against the Horde. I feel like Blizzard is building up that faction crumbling that we kind of had with that faction divide that we had with the Horde. I think they're going to do that with the Alliance in their own unique way. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I feel like they're going to do that with Tyrande leading the charge. I think that the most likely story scenario they're going to do is have kind of what Gen did in Stormheim, where he was hunting down Sylvanas.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I think they're going to have Tyrande do that, but like obviously Sylvanas will not have as much support as she did last time, because she's now probably an enemy of the Horde. I think the Horde might help out in their own way, because you had Farstriders that Lorthamar commanded to go ahead and hunt down Nathanos and Sylvanas. So we might have like a parallel story where the Blood Elves are helping out Tyrande, and like, Tyrande's very cold to them at first. So maybe we'll see a little bit of redemption with Tyrande. Maybe we'll see Tyrande warm up to the idea of the Horde helping them, and I just like the idea of the Horde and the Alliance working together more. And
I do too.
If it's in unity of taking down Sylvanas, let's go for it, man. Let's go.
So, I actually really like the idea of the Zandalari fighting with the Night Elves for some reason, in some way, shape, or form in the next expansion. I know I say that like every podcast, but you brought up the visual of the Blood Moon versus the Elune Moon, or the Night Warrior Moon, but I could see it potentially happening. I'm sure Talanji's not too happy with the Alliance. So I'm sure she'd have no problem fighting them, but...
I was sorry. I didn't realize I was muted there for a second. I did want to say, when it comes to the faction war, I think they're going to use Tyrande and Gen as conduits. I guess you would say, if we're kind of having a justifiably split PvP system. I think they are letting the formal faction barrier down. I think pretty soon we're going to be able to queue with one another. We're going to be able to do content together. I know not everybody's of that opinion, and that's a very controversial opinion. I do think that is where the trend is leading. I think, in a sense, the game is going to act as though there are 3 factions now. I think whenever it comes to in the PvE sense and the general world, you're going to have one faction where it's both races are going to be allowed in, essentially. And maybe in the PvP sense, you're going to have the loyalist factions. I guess you would say not really loyalist, but not really extremist either, but people that just aren't willing to let go of the past. People that are in the Horde or Alliance and just aren't completely forgiving towards the other races and stuff, and don't really want to work alongside them. Blah blah blah. And maybe that's their way of keeping battlegrounds and things of that sort currently in, and maybe they could have the neutral faction in that sense act as its own faction in PvP. So like you could maybe have neutral versus either Horde or Alliance loyalists, you know, and I know some people might not feel like that would make total sense because, you know, why would the neutral parties be attacking them? But if you think of it from the perspective of the Horde and Alliance loyalists attacking the neutral parties because they see them as traitors and consorting with the enemy, then in my opinion, it's much more plausible.
And I know we've talked about this a little bit off camera, Kai, but if a lot of people notice when they log onto their characters now, there's a faction logo next to it. Like
Exactly.
They could add a bunch of factions, and you could see more and more appear next to your character that's aligned with certain factions. I really think there's going to be a big focus on that next expansion.
For which I'm very excited. I know.
Oh man.
I mean, I'll miss the Alliance and Horde scheme, but I do genuinely think it's played out. I'm sorry. I've been playing since the beginning of the game. I know I'm not using that as a sort of, oh, my opinion's better than everybody else's. I'm just saying I've played with the Alliance and Horde scheme for a long time. I do like it. I do think it has, or it can't even continue going forth. But only under the veil of idealism, I would say. If you make the Alliance and Horde less red versus blue and more ideal versus ideal. I think that time has passed. That opportunity was in BFA. I don't think they capitalized on that opportunity, or maybe they just didn't want, you know, the faction thing to go on after BFA, even before BFA started. But either way, I do think the Alliance Horde faction has happened. It's going to go away, and all the races are going to start mingling.
So,
I mean, I disagree, but, you know.
Actually, Skoll, before we move on to the next topic, say why.
Well, they're doing all this stuff with, like, changing up the Horde leaders and establishment and, like, the council and stuff, and I don't know, like, Horde and Alliance have been, like, a pivotal part of World of Warcraft, and I can't see them really removing that and changing it up that much to the degree that you're saying. So I personally don't think they're going to do that. If they do that, I won't be against it. It just, I personally don't think they're going to do it.
On the contrary, I would say it's necessary, but that's just me. I think they need to blow minds in a different sense of not just burning down Teldrassil and not just making Sylvanas or making a new war chief every expansion. Like, this is their next big boom. This is the next big thing that people are going to flock to the game for. You know, from an out of game perspective, that's something that a lot of people would be like, oh wow, you know, oh, we're all going to be able to play together. They've already got this system.
I think they'll let people play together. I just don't think they're going to take away the factions of the Horde and the Alliance. I think they're going to keep the separate entities, but that's just...
I do think there's going to be a semblance of the Alliance and Horde. I don't think they're going away. I do think that's going to be their conduit for keeping PvP content in the game. But that's just my opinion.
So I'd like to talk about, for the last subject, because I think we're going to go on for about 25 minutes, 20 minutes about this, is the stuff in Pandaria and the Assault feature that's coming in 8.3. I think the next episode, guys, for those that have stuck around this long, we're going to talk more about Ny'alotha and the Old Gods. This one was kind of more focused, I think, on the factions and some of the upcoming stuff. We can also talk about the allied races before the end of this episode. But actually, why don't we do that? Let's talk about the allied races first. So for those who don't know, we are getting Vulpera and Mechanomes, and I've seen a lot of people complaining, but I think it was quite obvious we were going to get the Vulpera in 8.3, same with the Mecha. They were just both given allied races, and I played around with them on the PTR a little bit, and the models were both pretty good for both of them. The customization was good, and the requirements to get them, as long as you've played BFA, you'll basically have them unlocked, so I have no complaints there. As far as the story is concerned, the Vulpera one's pretty interesting. Nobody actually recruits them. They actually recruit themselves and prove their worth to Bane Bloodhoof, I believe. So that's a little bit different. I was actually curious who was going to bring them into the Horde. But I actually don't know who brings the Mechanomes in, if either of you do.
I actually didn't even know how the Vulpera were recruited either.
don't know the Mechanomes, sadly. I didn't do much research in them. I was more interested and curious about
The
the
Volpera.
Volpera because I was overhearing like stuff about the War Council or just the Council. I keep calling it the War Council because that was the name I was thinking of for it.
Mm-hmm.
But
I thought it was too.
But I think it's interesting that the Volpera basically recruit themselves. They're just like, well, we want to join the Horde, and the Horde's like, we don't have room for you. Our resources are spread too thin. So instead of being all upset about it and remaining neutral or going out of their way, they instead try to help out with the Horde and the Naga attack on Zandalar. And I guess that proves to the Horde, at least it proves to Bane, that the Volpera are ideal allies to join the Horde. So the Volpera kind of prove themselves, but it's kind of interesting because I know a lot of people who view the Volpera with a lot of disdain and are like, I don't want them in the Horde. So it's kind of interesting that Blizzard. I want to think that Blizzard took with that knowledge that so many people were against the Volpera. They're like, all right, let's roll with that idea with like Bane saying no to these guys and seeing how they would react to that. So I guess this is kind of like my way of seeing it. Like, okay, the Volpera, they wanted to join the Horde. They really did, and then they got rejected. So what do? They prove themselves. I thought that was really interesting, and they get a snake as a pet for hunters, which I think is interesting because they're snake. What is it called? Snake charmers. Snake charmers with the little flutes.
Yeah.
And I think their mount is a hyena, even though it should be an alpaca. I did see an alpaca mount data mine, so I think that they might do an alpaca mount for everybody, maybe.
Also, Dolly and Daughter and Orgrimmar, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I think. Oh, this is what's upsetting to me regarding the allied races. So, Volpera start out in Orgrimmar in Valley of Honor, just like the Mag'har do. And the Mechanomes start out in Mechagon, in their own futuristic city, like the actual city itself from the dungeon. I think that's BS. The main reason why I think it's BS is because the Mag'har, okay, it makes sense. They don't have a home to start out in because their home got taken by the Draenei. I would have given them Underhold, but what can you do? The Volpera, they have Vol'dun. They should start out in Vol'dun. Somewhere in Vol'dun. Just let them
Have a place.
come on over. Yeah, let them have a place. Don't just throw them in Orgrimmar like everybody else. Like I really didn't like that. And then Mechagon get a really nice city. It makes sense that they get a city, but I think it's kind of frustrating for the Horde allied races to keep not getting places to start in. But oh well.
Yeah, what can you do? Kai, did you have anything? I mean, personally, myself, after playing around in the models a little bit, I'll definitely make an alt of both at some point in BFA when we get to that inevitable content lull before the next expansion. But yeah, Kai, what did you think? I didn't mean to interrupt.
In truth, this is gonna sound mean. I felt very indifferent about them both. I never was too fascinated with either race. I was very fascinated with the idea of Mechanomes, and as shallow as this is gonna sound, that interest went away whenever I saw their aesthetic. I think I love their cities and stuff, but whenever I pictured Mechanomes, I was picturing like a really cool. I don't really understand myself in describing this, but I don't know. I just did not picture their aesthetic being as it is. But that being said, like you said earlier, I will definitely roll an alt for both, and I do think one idea that's pretty interesting for Volpera is with some of the data mine stuff, Oldham is going to be relevant again. And I don't know, the idea of a Volpera riding a camel out in Oldham seems pretty cool. Seems very fitting for them as a race. So,
I dig that picture in my head, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. I was like, maybe I'll make a Volpera rogue or something and give it a shot once all the hate. Or actually, I don't even care if the hate does subside. I'm gonna play what I want to play. I played Pandas whenever they came out. Fell in love. I don't care.
So there's one thing that is illegal about Volpera, and I think you know what I'm gonna say.
What's that?
Volpera monk. It makes sense in the lore.
Have not seen their race class combos. I don't even know what either race can be yet.
It makes sense that Pandaren could change them, but It's definitely an illegal race class combo.
I think any monk other than a Pandaren monk is illegal to me.
Confirmed on the Kun-Lai Campfire, guys. Only play Pandaren monk or get out.
Yeah,
No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. Yep, everything else is illegal.
Yeah, they can be a lot of classes. Most of them, to be honest. I want to roll mine as a priest if I make one as an alt. By Mecha Gnome, I don't know what class I'm gonna go, but yeah, no, they're cool. I'm happy about them, both.
I think if I would roll anything, I would roll Rogue for Volpera, but I'm sure that's going to be most people, but oh well. Rogue for Volpera, and Mecha Gnome's probably Hunter, just because of that sexy gun model from Mechagon. Looks so cool, and I mean, that would fit a Mecha Gnome so perfectly.
That would be pretty badass. I dig it.
Yes.
So, I think we basically covered the allied races, so I'd like to get to our final topic, and I'm excited about this one. So, for those who don't know, me and Kai are obsessed with the Hwaujin Pandaren and the Tushui Pandaren, but we didn't just get them. We got a lot of Pandaren lore in the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. So first of all, the Veil of Eternal Blossoms is coming back. Oh my god, I'm so excited about this. As you guys can see, we chose this spot because, you know, hopefully the destroyed one will be like a time thing you can just skip through. But we're going to have the beautiful Veil back. And two of our favorite Pandaren are present when the Veil is being assaulted. We got G Firepaw, Asa Cloudsinger, front and center. And the interesting piece about this is they're actually surrounded by Hwaujin and Tushui monks that are orcs, humans, and there was another race, a dark spear troll I saw. And I think the interesting thing about Hwaujin and Tushui is it's a philosophy, right? So, like, it's very philosophy-based, so it makes sense that other races could identify under them, you know what I mean? So...
Absolutely. That's why I say, and it's so strange that I would say this leading a Pandaren exclusive guild, which might change pretty soon. But, yeah, the Pandaren are one of the most open and least xenophobic races, I would say, portrayed in the game. Of course, you have your exceptions, how Taranju was when the Alliance and Horde first showed up on the shores, but, I mean, how else was he supposed to feel? They were agitating the Shah, and causing a lot of trouble, you know?
Yeah.
But in general, I think the Pandaren are definitely portrayed as a very open, very accepting sort of people that just want to see the world, you know. And for the most part, definitely the Isle Pandaren more so than any other. So it's definitely very good to see other races being formally recruited as Tushui and Hwaujin into the faction, and seeing that Hwaujin and Tushui don't just mean, oh, that means Pandaren for both of the factions. No, they are philosophies in their own right. In fact, you can argue that you can be a Tushui Pandaren and the Horde and a Hwaujin Pandaren and the Alliance.
Ken Stormstout says he's both.
Yeah, and I mean, he says, and that's a big part of the story. I don't know if you've ever read Shadows of the Horde. But that's a big part of the book in there is how he describes Tyrethan. I hope I said that right. Tyrethan as more of a Hwaujin, even though he's a human, and Vol'jin as more of a Tushui, even though he's with the Horde. So, yeah, I think that's a very exciting concept. I understand the Tushui way more than the Hwaujin way, which is funny because I play so many Hwaujin characters, but I just think they're so fun.
I'm surprised to hear that from you, to be honest.
I do think I fit more with the Tushui line of thought. I believe in pragmatic and reasoned thinking, you know, taking it slow, considering your options with care, and not being too decisive about your actions. But I do like RPing characters on both sides. Or maybe I guess you could say I like to think there is a balance, just like Master Shang-Chi says, is that there's you sort of balance the philosophies, you know, take your approach with each one.
I always like how they're like yin and yang almost when you compare the two.
Yeah, and when they get along together, it's like with the Alliance and Horde, they can do great things. But whenever they clash, it can be extremely destructive. So
I think we'll get a quest line regarding the two, especially with how much G and Asa have been starting to get pushed into the storyline. Like, I love the fact that they're like the ambassadors for the Alliance and Horde now. I think that's a really good role for them.
This is the absolute perfect time for our idea that we mentioned in I think several videos before, where we say that the Huojin and Tishui are ideals, and they need to show that there are differences in those ideals and how they can clash. This, in my opinion, is the perfect time to show that. If there's going to be some conflicts out in the Vale, maybe they each have their own dealing with it. Maybe the Huojin are willing to throw a bunch of people to end something that is going to cause more damage down the line, and the Tishui disagree heavily because they feel like the losses would be too substantial, or something of that sort. You know, they could come up with any variety of reasons to do it. But yeah.
Oh man, Kai, we have a lot of good Pandaren lore coming.
Yes, we have to make a. In my opinion, I think a Tishui versus Huojin philosophy video would be amazing to do. I think that's precisely my forte as well. I love philosophy, and especially whenever it comes to rationalization and things of that sort. So yeah.
Mostly, I mean, you guys covered all the Pandaren stuff. I mostly just wanted to cover the topic that our good old buddy Raden has returned from.
So really quick before we get off of Pandaren, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, Skoll. Golden Lotus are actually active in the middle of the zone too, defending against the Mogu, which is pretty awesome.
Well,
yeah,
that's why I wanted to cover. But we actually have some with Raden's return, which I never thought they would do this. Actually, I knew that they would do something with Raden. I just didn't know they would do it with this. But Raden is commanding the Mogu again, and these Mogu, for once, are Mogu who are helping us fend off the forces of Nyalotha and the Void and whatnot within the Vale. I believe they're a new faction. I don't know what they're called, but they're a new faction of good Mogu led by Raden, and potentially at some point Raden gets corrupted by the Void and gets brought to Nyalotha. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it is. I hope we can save him because I actually really like Raden. He's always been one of the most elusive keepers. He was in charge of Southern Kalimdor all by himself, and it's no wonder he kind of went to a depressive life, and Lei Shen showed up and, took his power from him. I do wonder if they plan on doing anything with Lei Shen, with Rathian. I know I talked to you about this briefly, Box. I was thinking about how Illidan consumed the skull of Gul'dan and kind of communicated with the spirit of Gul'dan. I kind of wondered if the same thing would happen with after Rathian ate the heart of Lei Shen, if Rathian would converse with Lei Shen, but probably not. I don't think they're going to do that, but that's just something really interesting that I thought about when they brought Raden back, and I'm curious what they're going to do with Raden leading these Mogu, and if these Mogu, because it's on everyone's mind, because when a race becomes a positive force or becomes active again randomly, people are like going, ooh, allied race, who's this going to go to? I don't know if it's, I don't think Mogu are going to be an allied race, but it'd be interesting if they went to either or.
I mean, they have female models for him too, so.
Well, yeah, they share the skeleton with Draenei, so they could probably get an updated model knowingly, and just add a little bit more features to them and whatnot. I like the Mogu. I think they'd be interesting.
I do
on
too.
Either side. They're very savage, so it'd be an interesting take in the Alliance, but it'd also be either way, the Pandaren are gonna feel really awkward with them around.
I was about to say, I think it's gonna piss off Pandaren players, to be honest.
But the thing is, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Box. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Basically, I was just saying, I know a lot of Pandaren players on the Horde are pissed off about the Zandalari joining the Horde, and I mean, myself, I like Pandaren are the most forgiving race out there. I think it's fine and real. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother me, but I've seen it bother other people.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was one of those people at first. Whenever they first announced Zandalari, I was like, oh, it is going to be extremely strange playing a Pandaren on the Horde. The truth is, just like with Void Elves, just like with Zandalari, it has to happen, and then you just kind of fill in the gaps as you go. If they were to make a Mogu a race, I'm sure obviously they wouldn't just throw them in there, be like, hey, guess what, Pandaren, you're allied with the Mogu now. They're gonna have some sort of arc, not particularly involved with the Pandaren, but in a sense of, as you say, making them quote good, making them, making it plausible for them to join one of the factions, or even both the factions, if it were to come to that.
And the interesting thing too, if they kill Raden off in the raid and he's acting as leader, they might be looking for a faction to join. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, they've surely taken a hit. So I mean, through no fault then, and any of that, through their own faults, they've taken a hit. But yeah.
So was there anything I missed in the Veil? Because I know it was brief, that we actually got through a lot of that quicker than I thought. And we're actually at an hour and 5 minutes, so I think it's probably a good point to wrap down. Wow, that piece went by fast, man.
Yeah, it did.
I want to make this a two-parter because there's so much to talk about, and I believe next time it might be 4 of us with Goliath the Dwarf. So
look forward to talking.
We'll get more in depth, I think, with the Nyalotha and Enzoth stuff next episode, and more of the features. But this is a very hefty patch. As usual, I want to thank both of you guys for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
But
always good to be on.
Dude, honestly, doing this podcast is wicked fun with you guys. It's like one of my favorite parts of my channel.
Yeah, me too, man. It's really fun.
Yeah, I like it too.
So anyway, guys, check these guys out on YouTube, Twitter. Throw a pizza at Skoll Shorties, and if you guys have any requests in the comments below, if you made it this far, let us know. We'd be happy to cover it. You can throw a pizza at the screen if you didn't like this podcast. But anyway, guys, we'll see you next time.
See ya.